I was 9 when I first realized something was wrong with my dad, even if I didn't have the words for it. He'd come home already angry, slamming doors, yelling about dinner, the house, our homework, how loudly me and my little brother Jake were playing. Mom would rush around trying to calm him while Jake and I hid in our room and played a game we called Statue. We'd freeze completely still, barely breathing, because any sound might attract his attention. I could stay frozen for an hour. Jake, only 6, couldn't. When he twitched or sneezed, I'd step in, distract Dad, take the focus off him. I thought that was normal until I had dinner at my friend Emma's house. Her dad came home tired, kissed her mom, ruffled her hair, asked what we were playing. No yelling, no tension. I waited for him to explode. He never did. In the car, I asked Mom why Emma's dad was so different. She gripped the wheel and said, "Some people just have bad tempers. Your father works hard. We need to be understanding." That became the script for everything. At home, the rules changed with Dad's mood. Laughing at dinner was fine one night, disrespectful the next. Once, Jake proudly showed him a spelling test with a good grade. Dad slapped it out of his hand without looking. That night, I heard my parents fighting, a crash, and the next morning Mom had a bruise she blamed on bumping the counter. I was 10. I didn't believe her. By 12, I was an expert at managing him. I could tell from the way his key turned in the lock what kind of night it would be. Heavy and quick meant rage, hide. Slow and careful meant he'd been drinking, be extra quiet. Fumbling meant he was really drunk and would probably pass out. I became Jake's protector, taking blame for him, steering him out of Dad's way. At school, I was the smiling honor roll kid. Only my teacher, Mrs. Abernathy, seemed to suspect something. She kept me after class, asked gentle questions, slipped us extra snacks and spare coats. I always lied. What happens at home stays at home. When I was 13, everything changed. In math class, the principal came to get me. Jake was in the hospital. My mom sat in the waiting room crying, refusing to look at me. A doctor said Jake had fallen down the stairs and gotten a concussion. I knew immediately that wasn't true. Jake was careful. Careful kept you safe. When I finally saw him, he whispered the truth. Dad got mad because he spilled juice on the carpet, pushed him, and he fell down the stairs. A cold feeling washed over me. I hadn't been there to protect him. Then a woman in a suit came in, Mrs. Chen from Child Protective Services. They asked to speak to Jake alone and sent me back to the waiting room, where Mom was arguing with police officers. She grabbed my arm so hard it left marks and hissed, "Remember what we always say, what happens in our house stays in our house." That was the moment I realized she'd always known, and chosen not to stop it. When an officer with kind eyes, Officer Lopez, asked what happened, I froze like I was playing statue. Then something in me snapped. I looked at Mom's pleading face, at Jake's door, and told the truth. It all poured out. The yelling, hitting, the bruises shaped like fingerprints, Mom's accidents, being locked in closets, the way we weren't allowed friends over, how Dad controlled when we could eat, sleep, even speak. They photographed old injuries I'd written off as clumsiness, a forgotten wrist fracture, bruises in different stages of healing, a burn scar from his cigarette. That night we didn't go home. We went to an emergency foster home, the Reynolds. They spoke softly, asked before they touched us, gave us clean pajamas and real beds. The next day we learned Dad had been arrested, Mom was under investigation, and we'd be staying there for a while. Mom was given a choice, us or Dad. She chose him. That hurt more than any hit. Soon, they found Grandma Ruth, Mom's mother, who we barely remembered because Dad had cut off contact. She took custody. Her little house with a garden became our new home. She told us to help ourselves to food whenever we were hungry, didn't yell when Jake broke a lamp, treated us like actual people. But we were still jumpy, asking permission to get water, flinching at loud noises, automatically cleaning before she came home. We started therapy. Jake saw a child psychologist. I saw Dr. Martinez, who worked with abused teens. Slowly, I learned that hypervigilance, perfectionism, panic over small mistakes weren't just who I was. They were trauma responses. I'd been parenting Jake for years, doing a job that never should have been mine. At our new school, with no chaos to manage at home, my grades soared. Jake discovered he loved drawing. We both started to feel almost normal. Mom sent letters and cards full of excuses, and it wasn't that bad, and other kids have it worse. I read them, got angry, then numb, and threw most away. Years later, she finally left Dad, got into therapy, and started showing up quietly at my events, staying in the back. I didn't forgive her, but I stopped feeling constant rage. We built a distant, cautious truce. Jake took longer. I respected that. 4 years after we left, Dad went to prison for child abuse. When I was in college studying psychology, I got news he'd be released early. Jake was terrified he'd come looking for us. I decided to see him once, not for reconciliation, but for closure. In the visitation room, he looked older, smaller, but still him. He tried to blame stress, his own childhood, claimed he'd always loved us in his way. I let him talk until he ran out of words. Then I told him mine. I described every bruise, every threat, every time we hid in the closet playing statue, every lie we told teachers. I told him I understood the cycle of abuse, that he'd been a victim once, but understanding wasn't the same as excusing. His job was to protect us, and he had failed. I told him we were thriving without him, that Grandma had shown us what real love looked like, and that this meeting wasn't a fresh start. It was goodbye. When he tried to get angry, I raised my hand, and he stopped. That tiny moment, him stopping because I told him to, showed me how much power had shifted. I walked out feeling like I'd finally set a heavy bag down. Jake and I built lives. He went to art school. His most famous piece is a sculpture called Statue, 2 terrified children frozen in place. It hangs in a museum now. I finished my PhD and became a psychologist specializing in childhood trauma. I work with kids like we once were, train officers and social workers to notice bruises and fear behind forced smiles, the way Mrs. Chen and Officer Lopez did for us. Grandma Ruth died at 83. Losing her was like losing our true parent. She left us her house and savings, but more importantly, a blueprint for how to be decent humans. Mom remarried a kind man and volunteers at a women's shelter. I'm still not sure if that's growth or guilt, but at least something good is coming from her choices. Dad died of liver failure. We didn't go to the funeral. I don't hate him. I feel sad for the childhood we lost and relieved we escaped. My husband and I are expecting our first child now, a little girl who will never have to freeze like a statue when a door opens. She'll know boundaries, safety, and unconditional love. Sometimes my old responses flare up, flinching at anger, feeling guilty for taking up space, but they're quieter now. I've learned to parent myself, to give younger me the compassion my parents never did. What made me realize my parents were bad at parenting wasn't one moment. It was 1,000. My dad's key turning in the lock like a threat, my mom telling me to be understanding, Emma's dad coming home gentle instead of furious, Mrs. Abernathy's worried eyes, Officer Lopez saying, "This isn't your fault." What keeps me going now is knowing I don't have to repeat their story. I can break the cycle. My parents failed us in every way that mattered, but they don't get to define who we are, or the kind of parents we become.